The iron bells of Stonevale Fortress tolled, their echoes shuddering down the mountain like a death sentence. Hannah's knees pressed into the cold marble of the sacred hall as every eye pinned her like a specimen under glass. Her healer's robes had been stripped away, replaced with ceremonial white silk that felt more like a shroud than a bridal garment. She was supposed to be marrying Matthew, the kind, soft-spoken alpha prince who had once slipped herbs into her satchel with a secret smile. Instead, the officiant's booming voice declared her bound to his brother. By sacred bond and blood, you are wed to King Daniel Gray. The crowd gasped. Hannah's breath hitched. This wasn't a mistake, it couldn't be. But the silver bands were already burning against her skin, fusing to her wrists. She tried to rise to object, but hands shoved her down. From the dais above, the Alpha King stepped into view. Tall, broad-shouldered, shadowed in the torchlight, Daniel wore no smile. His eyes were steel, unreadable, as if she were nothing more than a pawn. The hall buzzed with whispers. Hannah's heart screamed a single truth: they've trapped me. And then from the corner of the chamber Matthew surged forward, rage in his voice. She was promised to me. The guards drew blades. The hall erupted. And Hannah, bound to the wrong alpha, realized her life had just been stolen in front of the entire kingdom. Chapter 1. The fortress walls loomed like jagged teeth as Hannah was escorted from the hall, her wrists aching where the sacred bands seared against her skin. Every step felt heavier, the echoes of Matthew's voice still ringing in her skull. She had dreamed of a quiet life, healing the sick in the mountain villages, studying herbs by candlelight. Matthew had been her hope, a gentle alpha who saw her not as an omega to be bartered, but as someone with worth. Yet the counselor's oily smile during the vows told her the truth. This marriage had been engineered. The corridor smelled of iron and wolf musk. 2 guards flanked her, silent but watchful. Her throat burned with questions she wasn't allowed to ask. Sacred law forbade breaking the bond once sealed. She was chained to the Alpha King now, ruthless, feared, and rumored to have buried rivals in the snow. The heavy doors to the king's chambers opened with a groan. Inside, the firelight painted everything in shadows. Daniel stood near the hearth, removing his ceremonial cloak. His back was as rigid as stone, his shoulders broad beneath dark leather. He didn't turn when the guards shoved her inside and left. For a long moment the only sound was the crackling wood. Finally his voice cut through, low and sharp. You will not question what happened today. Hannah's chest tightened. I never consented. He turned then, and the force of his gaze hit her like a physical blow. His eyes were a piercing gray, cold as the mountain storms. Yet beneath that chill something flickered, something she couldn't name. Consent, he said, stepping closer, is no longer yours to give. The bond is sealed. You will act as queen, healer, and wife. Nothing more. Her fists clenched at her sides. And what of Matthew? You stole his life as well as mine. His jaw ticked just once. Then he leaned down, his presence swallowing the space between them. Speak his name again in my chamber and you'll regret it. The words were cruel, but Hannah caught the faintest hesitation in his tone, as if even Daniel himself wasn't sure whether he hated her, pitied her, or needed her bound to him. The bands on her wrists pulsed, a reminder of the sacred law. She was trapped. But even as fear pressed against her ribs, a sharper thought cut through. If the counselor wanted me bound to the king, there must be a reason. And I will find it. Daniel turned away, dismissing her with a wave of his hand. Sleep. Tomorrow the fortress will see you presented as mine. Hannah's spine straightened. Her voice was quiet but firm. I may be bound to you, King Daniel. But I am not yours. The fire crackled louder, as though the flames themselves recoiled at her defiance. And for the first time, Daniel Gray looked back at her not as a pawn, but as a problem. The beginning of something neither of them could control. Chapter 2. The morning broke cold and unforgiving, the kind of mountain dawn that bit through silk and bone alike. Hannah stood before the gilded mirror in the queen's chamber, her wrists still banded with silver, her body wrapped in a gown the attendants had forced over her head. White silk again, embroidered with wolf sigils that shimmered like chains in the firelight. Her healer's satchel, her real identity, was gone. All she had were strange jewels, heavy and cold against her skin. She felt like a stranger wearing another woman's life. A knock at the chamber door. The guards entered first, followed by Counselor Martin, the very man whose smirk during the vows had confirmed Hannah's fears. He carried a parchment scroll and a smile that oozed satisfaction. "The court awaits," Martin said, his tone dripping false courtesy. "Do try to remember your place today, my queen." The way he stressed the title made her stomach twist. He wanted her on display, compliant, broken. "I never asked for this," she murmured, her voice low but steady. Martin's eyes gleamed. "Sacred law doesn't ask. It binds. You would do well to remember that." He gestured for the guards to take her. They didn't grab her, yet, but they stood close enough that she could feel the weight of their presence. The walk to the great hall stretched endlessly. The fortress stones smelled of pine, pitch and smoke, ancient and unyielding. The closer they came, the louder the voices grew. Lords, warriors, villagers, all gathered to see the king's new bride. The doors opened with a thundering groan. The hall was packed. Torches blazed against stone pillars carved with wolves mid-hunt. Every eye snapped to Hannah. Whispers darted like arrows. "An Omega? She's too frail. How will she bear heirs? She's no queen." Hannah's chest tightened. She kept her chin up, but heat burned at her cheeks. He wanted to disappear. At the far end of the hall, on the raised dais, King Daniel sat in a throne carved from mountain stone itself. He looked every inch the ruthless alpha, broad shoulders cloaked in black fur, a silver crown gleaming against his dark hair, his expression hard as granite. Beside him an empty seat waited. Hers. Martin's voice boomed as he announced, "Behold the new queen of Stone Vale, bound to our sovereign alpha by sacred law." Hannah stepped forward, every muscle trembling, but she forced herself not to falter. She thought of Matthew, his gentle hands, his quiet encouragement. I was supposed to be beside him, not this monster. She mounted the steps to the dais. The whispers grew crueler, sharper. "Too small. She'll break. She's a healer, not a queen." One of the lords chuckled aloud, shaking his head. "The council has doomed us." The sound rang in Hannah's ears. Her throat burned. She wanted to scream that she was more than they saw, more than an Omega forced into white silk. But her voice caught. And then Martin stepped closer to Daniel, bowing low but speaking loud enough for the court to hear. "Perhaps, my king, it would reassure your people if the new queen demonstrated obedience." His eyes cut to Hannah, sly and sharp. "Kneel before your alpha husband. Show them you know your place." The hall stilled. Dozens of eyes fixed on her. Waiting. Hannah froze. Her heart pounded. She knew if she knelt now, she would never rise again in their eyes. But if she refused... Daniel rose. The movement was so sudden, so forceful, the hall itself seemed to quake. The king descended the steps toward her, the crowd murmuring in confusion. He stopped at her side, tall enough to shadow her completely. His hand, heavy and warm, pressed against the small of her back, not tender, not cruel, but firm. He turned to the hall, his voice a growl that silenced every whisper. "She kneels to no one but the bond we already sealed." A ripple went through the court. Anise. Daniel's gaze swept the crowd like a blade. "She is queen by sacred law. Any who doubt her doubt me. And I will crush doubt beneath my heel." The hall bowed instantly, murmuring submission. Hannah's breath caught. For one heartbeat, the weight of Daniel's hand on her back felt less like possession and more like shield. Martin's face twisted, but he hid it quickly. He bowed, though his eyes burned with venom. Daniel leaned close, his words low enough only she could hear. Do not mistake this for kindness. I only protect what is mine. But Hannah saw the truth he tried to bury. In that moment he had chosen to shield her from humiliation, not for law, not for politics. Something else stirred in him, something he fought to deny. Her pulse thundered with a dangerous realization. The ruthless Alpha King might be the only shield she has left. Chapter 3. The mountain dawn was steel-gray when Hannah stood before the brazier in the antechamber, waiting. The silver bands at her wrists pulsed with heat, their weight a constant reminder. Bound, sealed, trapped. The door opened. Daniel entered alone. He set his crown aside with a dull clink and peeled off his fur mantle, leaving hard leather and broad shoulders that filled the room. "You will hear my rules," he said, voice low. "And you will follow them." Hannah lifted her chin. "I'm listening." 1. You do not leave the East Wing without escort. 2. You never step beyond the fortress walls without my order. 3. You do not heal anyone of rank unless sanctioned. We have medics. They answer to me. I am a medic, she shot back. You are my queen, he countered. You will speak to me before you act. Her voice tightened. And if someone is bleeding out? His eyes, gray and cold, didn't flicker. Then you will send for me. Her chest burned. And Matthew? Is he safe? His jaw ticked. Another rule. Do not speak my brother's name to me. The brazier hissed. Her voice was steady, even as her heart raced. I won't be your caged ornament. I won't kneel while children die because my hands are tied. His eyes narrowed, then slid to his own fist, freshly cut, blood beading. It's nothing. It's infection waiting, she muttered, tearing silk from her hem. She seared it in the flame, wrapped his hand tight. The heat of his skin pulsed through her fingers. For a moment the sacred bands sparked faintly, silver light crawling across her wrists. Daniel stilled. He didn't pull away. Before Hannah could breathe again, a horn blared from the training yard below, followed by a child's scream. Daniel's head snapped toward the sound. He was at the door in 2 strides. Stay here. But Hannah heard it too. A boy crying out in pain. She ran. Down the balcony steps into the training yard she saw him, an 11-year-old page crumpled on the ground, a spear shaft buried under his ribs. Guards circled, frozen. Move, she shouted, dropping to her knees. Don't pull it, the splinters will tear his lung. The boy's lips were blue. His whisper cracked. Can't breathe. You can, she said, pressing her palm to his chest. Exhale on 3. 1 now. Her hands burned. The bands on her wrists flared. Warmth bled from her into him. His eyes cleared slightly, color crawling back to his cheeks. The crowd murmured, which someone whispered. She ignored them, slipping a flattened hairpin between his ribs to vent the air. The boy gasped. His little hand twitched. Jacob, she whispered. Stay with me. Enough. Daniel's voice cut through the yard. He strode in, gaze sweeping, boy wound, bands blazing at Hannah's wrists. His mouth tightened, but he barked orders to the guards. Litter. Medics. No. The queen stabilized him. Hannah's body shook with exhaustion. She tried to stand, swayed. And Daniel caught her. He lifted her in his arms like she weighed nothing, carried her from the circle of staring wolves. For a heartbeat pressed against him, Hannah felt not chains but safety. The yard whispered. The king carries her. Back in the chamber, Daniel set her down gently. His eyes were unreadable. You broke 3 rules. I saved a life, she whispered. Yes, he said. The word carried something almost human. Then his mask slammed back into place. You will not run toward danger again. If danger is a child dying, she said softly, I will. Their eyes locked. His mouth twitched as though caught between fury and something else. Then a hard knock rattled the door. Chapter 4. Counselor Martin entered with 2 guards and a smile sharp enough to cut. High King, he said smoothly. Two matters. Daniel's stance turned lethal. Speak. First, the Alpha Prince has vanished. A horse missing from the stables. His scent leads east. Hannah's stomach plummeted. Matthew. She bit her tongue before his name could slip. Martin savored the pause. Second, rumors spread from the yard. They say the queen bled unnatural light into a boy's wound. Witchcraft, they whisper. She stabilized him with skill, Daniel snapped. Do you question medicine? Martin's smile widened. I suggest approving. A rite before the council. A test of purity and obedience. At moonrise in the Wolfsbane Gardens. Daniel's jaw worked. You would make spectacle of my queen? It is law, Martin purred. Daniel's voice dropped to a growl. Get out. But when the door closed, Hannah whispered, What is the proving? His answer was grim. Theater. They bind you with silver light, ask questions designed to break you. They dip a blade in wolfsbane and test your fear. It is meant to crush courtiers. It will not crush you. Her throat tightened. And Matthew? If he's gone, Martin will blame me. Daniel's silence confirmed it. Then tell me how to win, she said, surprising herself. For the first time the king sat near her, close enough their knees brushed. You don't let them pace you. You ask the question first. You treat their blade like rusted metal. When the silver binds you, breathe and wait until they tire. You make them look like fools wasting your time. Hannah studied him. You've done it. He looked away. For my mother. The brazier hissed. The weight of those words pressed heavier than stone. Another pounding at the door broke the silence. A scout stumbled in, dusted white with snow. Sire, the prince is not alone. He rides with a female wolf in traveler's leathers. They're headed for the Wolfsbane Gardens. Hannah's blood turned to ice. And then it came, the howl from the gardens. Familiar, raw, threaded with grief. Her heart named it before her lips did. Matthew. Daniel flinched as though struck. Open the gates, a voice bellowed below. Daniel strode out, orders already sharp on his tongue. The door slammed, the latch fell, and Hannah was left alone in the chamber. Bands burning against her wrists, the echo of that broken howl clawing through her chest. Chapter 5. By nightfall, Stonevale Fortress glowed with torchlight, every window and walkway alive with murmurs. Word had spread fast. The new queen was to face approving. The Wolfsbane Gardens were carved into a cliff terrace, their silver leaves trembling under the moon like knives. Hannah stood at the threshold, the sacred bands heavy on her wrists, the chill sinking through her ceremonial gown. The air itself felt poisoned. Guards lined the walls. Villagers had been herded onto the ledges, faces pale in the torchlight. And at the center the council waited, robes dark against the silver shimmer. Martin, of course, stood at their front, his expression all polite cruelty. Daniel walked beside her, towering, every line of him radiating control. His hand brushed her elbow once, a subtle tether before he released it. Remember, he murmured without looking at her. Breathe. Make them chase your words. She nodded, though her stomach roiled. Martin raised his hands. His voice carried, smooth and oily. By law, when rumors taint the bond of the crown, approving is demanded. Tonight, under sacred moonlight, we test the queen's purity, obedience, and worth. Whispers rippled. Meg. Healer. Which? Hannah drew a breath, spine straightening. She would not fold. The first test came quickly. Two attendants stepped forward with chains of silver light, their glow sharp enough to sting her eyes. Hold out your wrists, Martin commanded. If your bond is true, you will not flinch. Her heart slammed. She extended her arms, steady. The bands snapped around her wrists with a crack like thunder. Pain lanced up her arms, burning, searing. She bit her lip hard enough to draw blood but didn't move. The crowd leaned in. Some gasped when she lifted her chin and said clearly, "If this is all the council has, Perhaps we should test their endurance next. A ripple of shocked laughter ran through the onlookers. Martin's smile faltered. Daniel's lips twitched, almost a smirk, but his eyes stayed steel. The second test followed. A ceremonial dagger was brought out, its edge slick with wolfsbane oil. The air itself seemed to recoil from it. Martin's voice purred. "Touch the blade. Let us see if corruption recoils." Hannah's pulse thundered. She stepped forward, every instinct screaming. The dagger gleamed under the moon. Her breath stuttered, but she remembered Daniel's words. "You ask the question first." Her voice rang clear. "And when I touch it, counselor, who will clean your mess? Who will wipe your poison from the sacred blade you pretend to honor?" A stir ran through the crowd. Martin's smirk twitched, but he extended the dagger all the same. Hannah pressed her palm flat against the metal. The sting bit instantly, sharp, hot, wrong. Her skin flared, the bands at her wrists blazing silver white. The pain nearly buckled her knees. But she held it jaw tight until the dagger hissed and smoked under her touch. When she drew back, her hand trembled, but she raised it for all to see, red, blistered but unbroken. A murmur swept the court. "She endures." Daniel stepped forward then, his voice deep as the mountain. "Enough. She has proven more strength in 5 breaths than most of you muster in 5 winters." But Martin's smile sharpened again. "One last matter. A question of loyalty." He gestured, and from the shadows, 2 guards dragged a figure forward, bloodied, staggering. Hannah's heart lurched. Matthew. His wrists were bound, his face pale, his eyes burning with fury. Beside him, the mysterious female wolf was forced to her knees, her cloak torn back to reveal wild dark hair and eyes that gleamed with defiance. The crowd gasped. Martin's voice carried, triumphant. "Your brother, my king, caught fleeing with a stranger. What will your queen say? Where does her loyalty lie, with the crown, or with the traitor she was meant to marry?" Every eye in the gardens turned to Hannah. The silver chains burned against her skin, the scent of wolfsbane thick in her throat, and Matthew's gaze, pleading, desperate, pierced her to the bone. Daniel's hand hovered near his sword. His mask was iron, but his jaw clenched as though the choice cut him too. Hannah's heart thundered. This was the trap. The proving's real test. And Martin's smile told her he knew exactly where her heart had always belonged. Chapter 6. The gardens fell silent, torches sputtering in the mountain wind. Only the silver leaves of the wolfsbane hissed like whispers, their shimmer casting ghost light on the scene. Matthew knelt, wrists bound, blood at his temple. His eyes locked on Hannah, pleading, furious, alive. Beside him, the dark-haired she-wolf lifted her chin, her mouth a grim line of defiance. Counselor Martin spread his hands for the crowd, his voice smooth as oil. "Behold your king's brother. A prince fleeing with a stranger. What clearer proof of disloyalty could we demand? The queen was meant for him. Does her heart still lie there?" Gasps rippled through the onlookers. Whispers swelled. She was promised to Matthew. She was stolen by Daniel. An accident, they said. Was it? Hannah's knees trembled beneath the silver chains. The wolfsbane still burned in her palm, a raw blister throbbing. Every instinct screamed to call Matthew's name, to beg them to release him. But Daniel's warning from the night before thundered in her head. "Speak his name and you'll regret it." Martin's eyes gleamed. He was baiting her, waiting for her heart to betray her lips. "Answer, Queen," Martin pressed. "Where is your loyalty? With the crown, or with the traitor prince you were promised?" The crowd surged with murmurs. Daniel stood motionless beside her, a wall of dark leather and steel. But Hannah felt the tension in him, the storm caged in his chest. His hand twitched near his sword hilt. Hannah swallowed, heat and pain roaring in her veins. She thought of the boy she'd saved that morning. She thought of Jacob's freckled face, his faint smile when breath returned. She thought of the villagers whispering which because she dared to heal. If she claimed Matthew now, Martin would brand her disloyal, corrupt, unfit. If she denied him, she would betray the only man who had once looked at her with kindness. The choice was a knife with no handle. Her lips parted. Silence choked the garden. "My loyalty," Hannah said, voice clear, "is to life." The words rang sharp, cutting through the murmurs. She stepped forward, dragging the chains, her wrists burning. "I am bound to the crown, and by that bond one swore to protect this kingdom. Every wolf in it. That means the prince as much as the page, the stranger as much as the king. My loyalty is not a game to be tested. It is the law of a healer. Life above all." The crowd gasped. Some voices rose in agreement, others in outrage. Martin's face twisted, but he masked it quickly, lips curling in false calm. A clever speech, yet not an answer. Crown or traitor, queen? Choose. The dagger still lay in his hand, glinting with wolfsbane oil. He extended it toward her again. "Prove it. Strike him down and end the doubt." Hannah froze. The world tilted. Strike Matthew? Before all of Stonevale? The crowd roared, half chanting, half jeering. Wolves pressed close against the walls, hungry for spectacle. Daniel moved then. Slowly. Deliberately. His shadow cut across the garden as he stepped between Hannah and the blade. "No," the king said. The single word shook the terrace. Martin blinked, startled. "Pie King." "No," Daniel repeated louder, his voice a growl that rolled like thunder. "You will not make her butcher blood to amuse you. You will not twist law to serve your thirst." He turned to the court, his eyes gleaming in the torchlight. "This queen saved a boy with her hands when your guards froze. She touched wolfsbane and did not break. And you would have her kill to prove loyalty? To whom, counselor? To me? To you? Or to your fear?" The murmurs fractured. Some bowed their heads. Others shifted uneasily. Martin's smile faltered. He tried to recover. "Pie King, it is custom." "Custom," Daniel cut in, "is not law." He raised his chin. "And I am law here." The silence that followed was sharp enough to bleed. Hannah's breath stuttered. Daniel hadn't looked at her once, but his stance, his words. He had just claimed her in front of the entire kingdom. Martin's mask slipped. Rage flickered through the cracks. "Then what shall be done with the prince and his companion?" Daniel's jaw flexed. He turned at last to Hannah, his gaze like steel on fire. For the first time he spoke not as king but as man. "You," he said low enough only she heard, "just told them your loyalty is to life. Prove it." Her pulse thundered. The council, the crowd, Matthew, all waited. And in that moment the weight of both men's eyes pressed on her. One desperate, one unreadable. Hannah lifted her chin. The choice she made next would shatter more than chains. Chapter 7. The wolfsbane garden was a pit of silence, broken only by the hiss of silver leaves in the wind. Every eye, lord, soldier, villager, bored into Hannah as she stood chained, her wrists burning, her heart slamming. Matthew's gaze cut her in two. "Choose me." It was there, in the fire of his eyes, in the way he strained against his bonds. The dark-haired she-wolf at his side tilted her chin defiantly, as if daring Hannah to fail. Daniel stood before her, a wall of leather and shadow, his words still echoing. "You just told them your loyalty is to life. Prove it." Her throat tightened. If she chose Matthew, the court would call her traitor. If she chose Daniel, she would damn the man who had once been her only kindness. She felt the sting of wolfsbane still blistering her palm. She thought of Jacob, the boy she had healed. Life above all. Her voice broke the silence. "My loyalty," Hannah said steady, "is not to crowns or councils. It is to every soul who breathes. That means the prince. That means the stranger. And that means the king himself." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Whispers flared like sparks. She raised her blistered hand high, letting the chains glow in the torchlight. "If loyalty means choosing who deserves to live and who deserves to die, Then your test is corruption, not law. And I will not kneel to corruption. A stir of approval ran through the villagers pressed to the edges. She speaks truth, someone muttered. She saved the boy. Martin's face twisted, but he forced a smile. Defiant words. Yet words do not cleanse doubt. He raised the wolfsbane dagger high. The right demands blood. The council murmured in agreement. Guards shifted, stepping forward. Daniel moved instantly. His hand clamped the dagger, stopping Martin mid-swing. His voice roared across the terrace. Enough. This rite is ended. The queen has proven more than any of you dared. She stands unbroken. The force of his command shook the torches. Wolves bowed their heads. Even the council fell silent, stunned. But Martin leaned close, his smile a razor hidden in velvet. Bold, my king. But when your brother bleeds rebellion, when your queen refuses obedience, your reign will fracture. Daniel's jaw clenched. Then let it fracture on my terms. He wrenched the dagger from Martin's grip, snapped it across his knee and flung the pieces into the wolfsbane beds. The silver hissed and smoked. The crowd gasped again, half in awe, half in fear. Daniel turned, his voice cutting the air. Unchain her. The attendants hesitated. Martin barked. She has not. I said unchain her. Daniel thundered. The silver bands snapped free. Hannah's arms fell heavy, raw skin blistered where the light had seared. But she did not collapse. She stood tall, chin lifted as the chains clattered to the stones at her feet. The villagers erupted, some cheering, others muttering of curses and omens. The council shifted uneasily. Martin's eyes burned. Very well, he said, venom in every syllable. But remember this, king. The bond you claim as shield may yet prove your ruin. He gestured, and the guards dragged Matthew and the dark-haired wolf back toward the shadows. Matthew's eyes locked on Hannah one last time, anguished, betrayed, desperate. Her chest ached as if the chains still bound her. Daniel stepped closer, his presence swallowing the space between them. His voice was low for her alone. You just made yourself a target. So did you, she whispered back. For a moment neither moved. Then the horns on the outer wall blared, urgent, sharp, a warning of danger beyond the proving ground. The fortress stirred. Wolves shouted. The air itself seemed to shift. Daniel's eyes hardened. To the gates. He turned, his cloak sweeping like shadow. Hannah followed, her wrists raw, her heart torn in too many directions. And in the darkness at the garden's edge, Counselor Martin watched them go, his smile returned, cold and patient. Because the proving had not broken her. But the next move he knew just might. Chapter 8. The fortress walls quaked with the horn's blare. Wolves rushed from the gardens, steel flashing under torchlight. The proving was forgotten in an instant. The mountain itself seemed to hold its breath. Daniel strode fast, his cloak sweeping stone, Hannah struggling to match his long strides. Her wrists burned raw where the silver had cut. She ignored the sting, her eyes on the looming gate towers ahead. What is it? She demanded. Raiders, Daniel said, voice clipped. Or worse. The east gate opened onto a sheer cliff road, the only passage through the pass. Smoke curled upward already, glowing orange against the night sky. They reached the courtyard as a rider staggered through the gates, half-shifted, fur bristling, blood soaking his tunic. He fell from the saddle, gasping. Shadow wolves, ambush, South Ridge. Gasps rippled through the soldiers. Shadow wolves. Rogues that killed for blood, not survival. Daniel caught the rider by the collar, steadying him. How many? Dozens, the man choked. They cut down scouts. His eyes rolled and he collapsed unconscious. Shut the gates. Daniel barked. The portcullis dropped with a groan. Archers to the walls. Medics. His voice cut, realizing the healers were scattered, still half in the proving ground. He turned, eyes colliding with Hannah's. No, he said instantly. Yes, she snapped, moving to the fallen rider. Blood pumped from a deep gash along his ribs. She pressed her palm to the wound, the bands at her wrists sparking again. Heat flared into the soldier's body. His breathing eased, color returning. Around them wolves stared. Some murmured which again, but others bowed their heads, awe in their eyes. Daniel's jaw tightened. You'll make yourself a target. I already am, she shot back. Shouts erupted from the wall. Arrows whistled down. A dark shape hurtled from the ridge. Massive, snarling eyes glowing red. A shadow wolf slammed into the portcullis, claws screeching against iron. The gates shuddered. The crowd of villagers screamed. Guards braced spears. Daniel drew his sword, the steel singing under torchlight. He leapt forward, striking through the bars. The wolf howled, staggering back. Another shadow form lunged, then another. The pack had come to the fortress itself. Martin appeared on the steps above, his voice cutting the chaos. See how the bond curses us. Already shadows rise against this queen. The words slithered into the panic. Some wolves flinched, glancing at Hannah as if she were the cause. Hannah's blood ran cold. She rose from the wounded soldier, fire in her voice. The shadows aren't here for me. They're here because fear makes you weak. Do you want to live or do you want to cower? Her words cracked through the chaos like a whip. Some soldiers straightened. Others roared defiance, rallying. Daniel glanced back at her, steel flashing, and for a heartbeat his eyes burned with something raw, respect. Open the sally gate, he commanded. We take the fight outside. The smaller gate creaked open. Daniel surged through first, blade gleaming. Wolves followed, shifting mid-leap, snarls ripping the night. Hannah froze at the threshold. She wasn't a fighter. Her hands were healer's hands. But the scent of blood filled her lungs. The screams of the wounded tore through her chest. She gritted her teeth and stepped into the fray. The mountain road was chaos. Shadow wolves lunging, guards slashing, bodies crashing against stone. Hannah dropped beside a fallen villager, palm glowing as she pushed warmth into his body. Another soldier screamed nearby, throat torn. She crawled to him, hands slick with blood, binding, pressing, healing until her vision swam. The sacred bands burned hotter with each touch. Power poured through her, wild and dangerous, threatening to consume. A massive shadow wolf broke through the line, eyes fixed on her. She scrambled back, heart pounding, its jaws gaped wide. Steel split the night. Daniel's blade caught the beast mid-lunge, driving it into the dirt. He planted his foot on its neck, finishing the kill with a brutal twist. Blood steamed on his sword. He turned, eyes locking on her. Stay behind me. Her voice shook. I can't. They need me. And then another wolf lunged from the dark, not at her but at Daniel's back. Hannah didn't think. She seized a torch from the wall and hurled it. Flames burst against the beast's fur, sending it howling over the cliff. Daniel spun, stunned for half a breath. His gaze locked on her, firelight flickering in his steel-gray eyes. They stood back to back, surrounded by snarls and blood, the bond between them burning hotter than the torches. The battle roared on. But in that moment, for the first time, Hannah felt something shift. Not chains. Not cage. Something like power shared. Chapter 9. The mountain road was fire and blood. Torches guttered in the wind. Sparks swept into the dark as shadow wolves poured from the ridges. Steel clashed, claws raked stone, the air alive with howls. Daniel fought like a storm given flesh. His blade carved through snarling muzzles, his boots braced against the shifting earth. Every strike was precise, lethal. But for every wolf that fell, two more seemed to climb from the night. Hannah kept close behind him, torn silk dragging, her hands raw with burns from the sacred bands. She pressed palms to wounds, forcing heat into soldiers collapsing at her knees. She tied strips of cloth with teeth and trembling fingers. Blood soaked her sleeves, sticky and metallic. Another soldier screamed, half his arm torn. She scrambled, pressing her hands to the mangled flesh. The bands flared. The world narrowed to breath, blood, and silver light. His eyes fluttered open. He lived. But each time she gave, she felt the burn deepen. Her body swayed with exhaustion. Behind me, Daniel barked, driving his sword into a lunging wolf. I can't, she snapped, shoving breath into another man's lungs. They'll die. For a second his gaze slashed to hers, furious, desperate, and she saw it. The fear he would not name. Not for himself. For her. A growl split the night. A shadow wolf larger than the rest, its shoulders high as a man, its fur bristling black fire, charged through the melee straight at Daniel. Hannah. She saw it before he did. She lunged, shoving her palm against the beast's flank. Pain like ice fire scorched her skin. The wolf shrieked, twisting, but its claws raked across her shoulder before Daniel's blade tore it down. Hannah crumpled, her gown soaked crimson. The bands on her wrists flared blinding white, searing the night. Daniel was there in an instant, dropping his sword to catch her. His hands pressed to the wound, his face pale beneath the blood and dirt. Stay awake. His voice cracked. Do you hear me? You don't close your eyes. Her lips trembled. I had to, her breath hitched. You didn't see it. Fool, he growled, but the word shook. He tore his own cloak, binding her shoulder with quick, brutal precision. His scent, wolf musk, iron smoke wrapped around her. His breath was harsh against her hair. A shadow wolf lunged from the side. Daniel spun, snarling, shifting half into his wolf form, eyes gone wild silver, teeth bared. He crushed the beast with strength that cracked bone, then hauled Hannah closer into his chest. Stay with me, he ordered, low, raw, as if command alone could hold her soul. Her fingers curled in his tunic, weak. The sacred bands pulsed between them, burning, binding, as though the bond itself refused to let go. Around them the tide of wolves faltered. Archers' arrows rained from the walls. Spears drove into the flanks. The rogues broke, scattering back into the ridges. The courtyard rang with ragged shouts of victory. But Daniel didn't rise, didn't look at the retreat. He knelt in the blood and ash, holding Hannah as if the battle hadn't ended. Her breath hitched again, shallow. You can't carry me every time. His jaw flexed. Try me. She almost laughed, but it broke into a cough. Warmth flooded her chest, pulling her down, and for a terrifying second the world tilted black. Daniel shook her, his voice a snarl. Hannah. No. The bands flared one last time, light streaming between their joined skin. She gasped, breath searing back into her lungs. Her eyes flew open. Daniel froze. For the first time since she'd met him, his mask was gone. He looked terrified. The silence after the battle was filled only by the ragged sound of their breathing. His arms locked around her, her blood soaking his cloak, the night alive with the glow of silver chains that would not let her die. Chapter 10. The courtyard reeked of iron and smoke. Shadow wolf corpses lay scattered at the base of the walls, arrows quivering from their hides. Soldiers panted, wounded groaned, torches guttered. The fortress had survived the night, but just barely. At the center of it all, Daniel knelt in blood-soaked stone, Hannah in his arms. Her gown clung dark with crimson, her skin pale, her lashes trembling. The sacred bands still glowed faintly where his hand gripped her wrist. The surviving villagers and soldiers stared, hushed. They had seen the bond flare. They had seen her bleed and burn, then rise again. To some it looked like a miracle. To others an omen. Martin moved through the silence like a viper, robes pristine, voice smooth enough to slice. Do you see? He cried, lifting his arms to the torchlight. Do you see what this cursed bond brings us? Wolves at our gates. Blood on our stones. Even the shadows themselves rise to tear us apart. The crowd murmured, fear trembling in their throats. Which? Bad luck. Omen. Daniel's head snapped up, his eyes silver bright. He rose slowly, lifting Hannah with him, and the sight of the Alpha King with blood across his jaw and his queen in his arms silenced even the whispers. "You dare," Daniel growled, "to call the woman who saved your sons and brothers a curse?" His voice thundered across the courtyard. "She bled so they might live. She faced wolfsbane without breaking. She stood in chains and still defied you all. If that is curse, then may this kingdom drown in it." The words slammed through the crowd. Some wolves bowed their heads. Others shifted uneasily. Martin's smile thinned, but his voice pressed on. "Bold words, my king. But boldness does not change law. A queen who courts death so easily cannot be trusted to rule." "She is bound to me by sacred bond," Daniel cut in, his voice hard as mountain stone. "And I say she is queen." The crowd gasped. Never before had he spoken the word with such finality. Hannah stirred weakly against his chest, whispering, "Put me down." He ignored her. His grip only tightened. Martin's eyes gleamed. "Then let the people decide. Let them choose if they will follow a queen who brings shadow to their gates." Daniel stepped closer, his presence so sharp even Martin flinched. "The people do not choose for me," he said. "I choose for them. And I choose her." The courtyard rang with silence. Even the wounded stilled, as though the mountain itself had gone breathless. Then the crowd split. Some cheered, voices rising in defiance. Others muttered, fearful, their eyes darting toward Martin. The fracture had begun. Daniel turned, carrying Hannah toward the fortress doors. His cloak dragged blood across the stone. Wolves parted in silence before him. Hannah's head tipped against his shoulder, her voice faint. "You can't hold me forever." His jaw flexed. "Watch me." And above them on the ramparts Martin watched too, his smile sharper than ever. Because though Daniel had claimed her in front of them all, the court was divided. Fear had been sown. And fear, Martin knew, was a seed that always grew. Chapter 11. Hannah woke to the scent of pine smoke and leather. The ceiling above her was carved stone, the chamber warm with firelight. Her shoulder throbbed beneath fresh bandages, every breath tugging at the wound. She tried to sit up. A heavy palm pressed her back down. "Don't." Daniel sat in a chair pulled close to her bed, his cloak discarded, his jaw shadowed with exhaustion. His eyes, steel gray even in firelight, fixed on her as though daring her to vanish if he looked away. "You've been here all night," she murmured, her throat dry. "I don't sleep when my queen bleeds." His voice was flat, but it frayed at the edges. Her pulse stumbled. She looked away to the flames. "I didn't ask you to keep watch. You didn't need to." The silence pressed thick. Her shoulder ached, but her tongue burned more. "You can't keep carrying me like a broken thing, Daniel. I have my own strength." His jaw tightened. "Your strength nearly got you killed. It also saved lives." She turned back to him, eyes sharp. "That boy. Those soldiers. If you cage me, they will die next time." His hand curled on the armrest, tendons stark. "If you die, Hannah, there is no next time." The rawness in his tone stole her breath. For a heartbeat she glimpsed something unarmored, fear, not fury. Then it shuddered away, his mask slamming back into place. She lay back, pulse racing. The fire crackled between them, filling words neither dared to speak. Finally, Daniel broke the silence. "The council whispers still. Martin claims the shadow wolves were drawn by the bond." Her lips pressed tight. "And do you believe him?" His eyes locked on hers, unblinking. "No. But fear spreads faster than truth. And Martin feeds it well." He swallowed. "He won't stop until I'm broken." "No," Daniel said. His voice dropped, iron-wrapped. "And I won't let him touch you." The words burned deeper than the bandages. A knock rattled the door. Daniel rose, crossing to open it. A servant bowed low, holding a bundle of parchment scrolls. "For the Queen, sire. Delivered to the gate at dawn." Daniel took the bundle, dismissed the servant, and carried it back to the bed. He hesitated before handing it over. "What is it?" Hannah asked. His jaw flexed. "See for yourself." She unfolded the top scroll. Her breath caught. It was a marriage decree. Not the one that had been read in the sacred hall 2 nights ago, binding her to Daniel. This one bore the seal of the High Council, faded, smudged with travel, but the name written in careful script was clear. Hannah Moore, bound by sacred law to Alpha Prince Matthew Gray. Her chest squeezed. Her vision blurred. This was the truth she had known, the bond she was meant to have. She looked up sharply. "Then how?" Daniel's eyes burned, fury caged tight. "Martin." He intercepted it. He orchestrated the switch. The parchment trembled in her hands. Her voice cracked. "So it wasn't an accident." "No," Daniel's voice was low, lethal. "It was treachery." The fire roared in the hearth. Outside, the mountain wind howled. And in the dim chamber, Hannah felt the world tilt beneath her, her stolen fate now inked in her hands. Chapter 12. The parchment shook in Hannah's hands, the ink blurring as her eyes burned. The decree was heavy, final, proof that her life had been stolen with deliberate hands. She whispered the words aloud as if tasting poison. "I was meant for Matthew." Daniel stood rigid by the hearth, his shoulders broad and tense, the firelight painting his profile in harsh gold. His fists curled at his sides. "Yes," he said, voice low, each syllable carved from stone. And Martin knew it. He intercepted the decree, switched the scrolls before the ceremony. He made certain the officiant read mine instead. Hannah's stomach twisted. "Why? Why trap me with you?" His jaw tightened. "Because Martin believes he can control me through you. An Omega bride, meant for my brother, bound to the king instead? He thought you would weaken me. Make me vulnerable." Her chest heaved. "And isn't he right?" Daniel's head snapped toward her, eyes flashing silver. "No." She met his gaze, heat sparking between them. "I never asked for this bond. And yet here I am, chained to you, despised by your court, hunted by shadows." "He's winning, Daniel. Every whisper, every fear, he's feeding on it. And you," her voice broke. "You're letting him." The silence that followed was sharp enough to cut. Daniel strode closer, stopping at the edge of her bed. His presence swallowed the air. "You think I wanted this?" he asked, voice rough. "You think I chose to take what was meant for Matthew? Do you know what I saw in your eyes when the vows were read? Hatred. Revulsion. And I swore I would never need anything from you." Her breath caught. She had seen his mask, yes, but never heard him admit what lay beneath. His voice dropped lower. "But now I see what Martin has done. And I will burn this fortress to ash before I let him use you again." The words struck deep, dangerous, half promise, half threat. Hannah turned the parchment in her hands, the sacred seal pressing into her palm. Her wrists still bore the faint glow of the silver bands, a reminder of a bond that should not exist. And yet, each time she healed, each time she touched him, the bands had flared brighter. Her chest tightened. "Daniel, the bond. It's changing me." He stilled. "How?" She lifted her blistered hand. The skin was raw, yet new flesh already knit along the edges, faster than human healing. Her pulse thundered beneath the bands, too strong, too sharp. "I should be weak. I should be fevered, half dead from the wound last night. But I'm not. The bond is feeding me. Or draining me. I don't know which." For the first time, Daniel's mask slipped into something close to fear. "Sacred law doesn't do this. Not unless." He stopped. "Unless what?" she pressed. His eyes met hers, storm dark. "Unless the bond doesn't belong to the council at all. Unless it belongs to the wolves themselves. And if that's true, then Martin has bound us to something he cannot control." The fire hissed, sparks leaping. Hannah's heart slammed against her ribs. "So what does that make us?" she whispered. Daniel's voice was a low growl. "Dangerous." Before either could say more, the horn on the ramparts blared again, short, sharp, urgent. The fortress stirred with shouts. Daniel's hand went to his sword. "Stay here." Hannah's pulse burned against the silver bands, heat surging down her arms. She knew staying behind was impossible. The bond itself tugged her toward the sound of danger, pulling her into its fire. And as Daniel strode toward the door, Hannah realized with dread certainty, whatever Martin had set in motion, the sacred bond was no accident anymore. It was awake. Chapter 13. The horn's blare rattled the stones of the fortress. Shouts carried down the corridors, urgent, sharp, fearful. Hannah pushed herself upright despite the ache in her shoulder. The parchment decree lay on the table, its seal staring at her like a wound. She should have stayed in bed. She should have obeyed Daniel's order. But the silver bands pulsed hot against her wrists, tugging her like a leash toward the sound of danger. She staggered to the door, gripping the frame. Outside, guards thundered past, weapons gleaming in torchlight. No one stopped her. Fear had scattered discipline. The courtyard was chaos again. Soldiers crowded the walls, archers ready, wolves half-shifted. From the cliffs below rose a sound that curdled the blood. Not the wild howl of rogues, but the steady, eerie rhythm of drums. Hannah froze. "What is that?" A villager cowered near the gate, eyes wide. "Raiders. Human raiders. They've never come this close." Humans. Wolves and humans had kept their distance for decades. But now torchlight glimmered in the ravine, dozens, no hundreds, of flames climbing the dark. Daniel's voice cut the night. "Hold formation. No one fires until I give the order." He stood on the battlements, commanding calm through sheer presence. But Hannah saw the truth in his posture. The pack was strained, wounded from last night's battle, unready for another. Martin appeared at his side, robes immaculate, voice carrying over the crowd. "This is what the bond has brought us. Wolves at night, men at dawn. Curse my king. The people will not endure it." Fear rippled through the villagers below. Murmurs turned sharp. Hannah's chest burned. "No," she said aloud, though no one heard. "This isn't the bond. This is him." Her wrists flared, white-hot. The pull was unbearable. She stumbled forward, past the guards, until she stood in the torchlight at the base of the gate. "Open the gates," she shouted. The soldiers gaped. "Pie Queen." "Do it," she cried, voice cracking with authority she hadn't known she possessed. "If you trap fear behind stone, it festers. Open them and let me face it." The crowd gasped. The portcullis groaned, chains rattling. Against their hesitation, the gate cracked open. Daniel roared from above. "Hannah!" But she stepped through before he could stop her. The night air hit cold. Torches dotted the ravine like fireflies. Human raiders in leather and steel advanced, shields raised, weapons flashing. Hannah's breath trembled. Her knees wanted to buckle. But the bond surged, hot and bright, a firestorm rushing through her veins. She raised her blistered hand. Silver light burst from the bands. The radiance blazed across the cliff, dazzling. The humans faltered, shielding their eyes. Wolves on the walls gasped. For a moment even the drums stuttered. The glow spread, spiraling outward, touching every wounded soldier near her. Their cuts closed. Their breath steadied. Strength surged back into limbs that had faltered. A miracle. Or a weapon. The courtyard roared with shock. Wolves dropped to their knees, whispering, "Blessed. Cursed. Witch. Fiend." Hannah staggered, the light dimming as exhaustion crashed down. She swayed on her feet. And Daniel was there, vaulting down from the battlements, catching her before she fell. His arms locked around her, his voice a snarl in her ear. "Never do that again." Her lips trembled against his shoulder. "I couldn't stop it." He looked out at the stunned crowd, at Martin's livid face, at the raiders retreating down the ravine under the weight of fear. Then he lifted her high, turning back to the fortress. His voice rang clear as a bell, impossible to ignore. "She's queen. And you will not touch her." The courtyard erupted. Summon cheers, summon cries of fear. And in the shadows at the edge of the walls, Martin's eyes glowed with triumph. Because the bond was no longer a secret trickle of power. It was wildfire. And wildfire burned kingdoms down. Chapter 14. The heavy doors of the queen's chamber slammed shut, rattling the iron sconces. Daniel carried Hannah straight to the bed, setting her down with a gentleness at odds with the fury in his movements. He paced once, twice, his boots biting into stone. Then he turned on her, eyes blazing silver. "What were you thinking?" Hannah sat upright despite the ache in her limbs, her voice hoarse but steady. "I was thinking the people were breaking. They needed strength. You nearly burned yourself alive." His voice cracked like a whip. "You opened the gates to human raiders. You stood alone." "I wasn't alone," she said quietly. "The bond was with me." Daniel froze, his breath ragged. For a heartbeat his mask fractured, fear bleeding through. "That's what terrifies me." She swallowed hard. "Because you can't control it?" "Because no one can," he snapped. His hands clenched at his sides, then dragged over his face as if he could wipe the truth away. "The bond shouldn't do this. It was supposed to chain you to me, nothing more. Now he broke off, pacing again. "Now it is rewriting the kingdom under our feet." Hannah stared at her blistered wrists, the faint glow still pulsing like a heartbeat beneath her skin. "Maybe it's rewriting us." Their eyes locked. The fire between them hummed, dangerous, electric. Neither moved. Neither dared. The knock shattered the moment. The door opened without permission. Martin swept inside, two counselors at his back. His smile was a blade. "High King," he said smoothly, bowing only a fraction. "Forgive the intrusion, but matters cannot wait." Daniel's voice dropped into lethal calm. "You enter my chambers without summons?" "Your fortress trembles," Martin countered, spreading his hands. "The people are terrified. Some call the queen blessed. Others call her cursed. Division grows by the hour. If we do not act, the kingdom fractures." Daniel's gaze sharpened. "What are you suggesting?" Martin's smile widened. "A council decree. For stability. Strip the queen of ceremonial duties until her bond can be studied. Confine her to the East Wing. Let the people see we are cautious, not reckless." "No," Daniel's voice cut the air like a sword. But Martin pressed on, his eyes glittering. "Refuse and you make yourself hostage to her power. Accept and you prove yourself a king above reproach. Which will it be?" Hannah's chest tightened. He was boxing Daniel in, forcing him to choose between crown and queen. Daniel stepped forward, the firelight catching the scar at his jaw. His voice was quiet, but it shook the stone. "Touch her with one chain, counselor, and I will hang you from these walls." The chamber went still. Martin's smile faltered, then hardened. He bowed mockingly low. "Very well. But when the people turn, do not say I failed to warn you." He withdrew, his robes whispering across the floor, the counselors trailing behind him like shadows. The door slammed shut. Daniel stood there, fists clenched, breath heavy, his control stretched thin. Hannah watched him, the words she wanted to say caught in her throat. Finally, she whispered, "You risked everything just now." His gaze met hers, storm and fire colliding. "So did you." The silence that followed was charged, dangerous and fragile. Outside, the fortress bells tolled midnight. A kingdom divided held its breath. And in the chamber's firelight, king and queen stood on the edge of something neither could escape. Chapter 15. The fortress was restless. Hannah felt it in the air the next morning. Thicker than the mountain fog, heavier than the scent of smoke that clung to the stones after battle. From her balcony she saw villagers gathering in knots, their voices sharp, furtive. Some bowed when they noticed her silhouette. Others turned away, whispering. The words drifted up like cinders. "Witch, curse, Shadowbringer." and laced among them another word, one that hollowed her chest. Matthew. By mid-morning, Daniel summoned his captains to the war hall. Hannah accompanied him despite his scowl, her shoulders still bound in fresh bandages. He would not be hidden. Inside, the captains argued over maps spread across the long stone table. Patrol routes, shadow wolf sightings, trade routes cut off by human raiders. The room stank of sweat and frustration. Then Counselor Martin entered. His timing was perfect. Always when voices were loudest and tempers raw. "My king," he said smoothly, "the people grow uneasy. They need reassurance. And who better to give it than the true heir they have always trusted?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. "Speak plainly." Martin inclined his head. "The prince. Matthew." The room rippled. Some captains exchanged looks. One cleared his throat. "He was always favored by the villagers." Another muttered, "Gentle, kind, not feared." Hannah's stomach turned. She looked to Daniel, but his jaw was stone, his knuckles white on the table's edge. Martin's voice oozed into the silence. "Already his name is on their lips. They ask if the wrong brother wears the crown. If the bond was not a mistake but theft. Perhaps, my king, it is wise to show mercy. Bring Matthew forward, let him speak, calm them." "Mercy." Daniel's voice was quiet, lethal. "Or abdication?" Martin smiled. "I speak only of unity." Hannah stepped forward, her voice sharp before she could stop it. "Unity through lies. You switched my decree, counselor. You bound me to the wrong man. And now you twist Matthew's name to cover your treachery." Gasps filled the room. Captains stiffened. Martin's smile didn't falter, but his eyes gleamed like a knife. "Careful, my queen. Accusations without proof are dangerous." Daniel's hand slammed the table. The map jumped, cups rattled. "Proof will come in your blood if you speak her name again." The chamber fell into silence. The captains bowed their heads, murmuring obeisance. But Hannah saw the truth in their eyes. Doubt. Fear. And beneath it, longing. Matthew's shadow lingered, whether they admitted it or not. Martin bowed low, but the smirk never left his lips. "As you wish, my king. I will take my leave." When the doors closed behind him, Hannah's chest heaved. "He's setting Matthew against you." Daniel's eyes, cold and furious, locked on hers. "Then Martin will learn what it means to set brother against brother." The words hung heavy. Because Hannah knew, if Martin succeeded, this wasn't only a war for a crown. It was a war for a heart already split in two. Chapter 16. Stonevale's morning broke thin and colorless, as if the night smoke had leached all the blue from the sky. The fortress hummed with a nervous quiet. Footsteps hushed, voices lowered, steel carried under cloaks instead of bared on hips. Rumor moved faster than wind. The queen lit the night. The king defied the council. The prince's name is on every tongue. A knock rattled the queen's chamber. 3 brisk raps, then a pause, then 2 more. Not a servant's pattern. Hannah rose from the bed too quickly. The room tipped and steadied. Her shoulder tugged under the bandage. She was at the latch before she finished deciding to be. When she opened the door, a young guard stood rigid, helmet tucked under his arm, eyes hot with a mix of fear and loyalty. She recognized him from the training yard, the one who had knelt beside Jacob as she worked. "High Queen," he said, breathless. "You asked me yesterday if anything changed with the prince." Her heart jolted. "Yes. He's awake. And he asked for you." For a long second her body forgot to be a body. Then she nodded. "Take me." The guard led her down the back stair that the servants used when the court was ugly. The stone was damp with meltwater. The air smelled of cold iron and old pine smoke. They moved quickly through a narrow hall to a door banded in black steel. Inside, the small antechamber beyond the cells was warmer than she expected, a brazier smoldering in the corner. 2 soldiers stood watch. Between them, seated on a bench with his wrists manacled in front, was Matthew. He looked up at the hinge squeal. The sight of him hit like a blow. Familiar mouth, too pale face, dark hair rumpled from sleep. A bruise shaded one cheekbone. A thin cut nicked his lip. His eyes, clear hazel, not the iron gray she had come to dread, lit and then darkened all at once. "Hannah," he breathed, and all the years of soft kindness lived in the way he said her name. Her throat closed. She crossed the room and stopped a careful arm's length away, conscious of the guard's eyes, conscious of the sacred bands warming at her wrists as if the bond disliked the distance. "I'm sorry," she said, because it was the only honest place to start. Matthew's mouth twisted. "For being alive. Don't you dare." A sharp sound escaped her, half laugh, half choked breath. "For not being where I should be. She shook her head. "This was not a choice." "I know," he said, the words quick and fierce. "I know what they did." He tipped his chin toward the brazier, and only then did she see the woman standing in its shadow. The stranger from the gardens stepped into the light. She was tall and spare, clothed in travel leathers scuffed with hard miles. Her hair, nearly black, was braided back from a hard, intelligent face. A thin silver mark scored the inside of her wrist. No council bond, just an old scar. Her gaze was keen, assessing. "I'm Avery," she said simply. "I pulled him off the East Road when 3 of Martin's men decided an accident on the cliffs would solve a great many problems." The room's air sharpened. "Martin sent riders without colors," Avery said. "But they smelled of wolfsbane and council ink. I've hunted long enough to know the stink of a bought blade." She slid a folded scrap of parchment from the lining of her jerkin. "Found this on one of them." Hannah took it. The seal was broken, smudged by weather, but the hand that had written it was meticulous. A name. A time. South Ridge Moonrise. Remove the complication before the proving. Signed with a flourish that was not quite Martin's, cleverly disguised, the looped letters offset, but wrong in a way a scribe's eye would recognize. Her fingers trembled. "You kept this." Avery's mouth ticked, humorless. "I keep everything that proves the truth when men like Martin start lying." Matthew leaned forward, chains clinking. "Hannah, listen to me. I never ran because I couldn't face him. I ran to draw the knives away from you. The minute the gates opened for the proving and I saw his face, Martin's, I knew we'd been played." Hannah's chest tightened until breath hurt. "And now I stand where a traitor should stand," he said, wry and broken all at once, "because it's the only way to keep them from using me to cut your throat." One of the guards coughed, awkward. The other shifted his weight, eyes flicking between their faces as if trying to learn a law no council ever wrote. The outer door boomed open. Daniel filled the threshold like a winter storm, a black mantle over leather, shadow and heat in a body built to rule. For a heartbeat Hannah saw him only as shape and scent, the iron of him, the way the room changed to hold his presence. Then his gaze found her, moved to Matthew, slid to Avery, and the quiet in his face went dangerous. "Out," he told the guards. They hesitated. He didn't raise his voice. "Out." They left quickly. Silence settled. The only sound was the brazier's soft hiss. Daniel's eyes never left Avery as he came closer. "You're the one who pulled my brother off the road." Avery lifted her chin. "Someone had to. Your council seems very busy arranging funerals for the living." Something like a smile that wasn't a smile ghosted Daniel's mouth. "We agree on that." He stopped in front of Matthew. For a long moment the brothers only looked at each other. Two men with the same hard bones under different kinds of scars. "You should have stayed," Daniel said. "You should have let me go," Matthew returned. "I couldn't," Daniel said. "I know," Matthew said softly. "Not forgiveness. Just the edge of truth." Hannah glanced between them, her ribs a cage too small for her lungs. This was the fracture Martin wanted. A kingdom split exactly here. Daniel shifted his attention to the parchment in Hannah's hand. "What is that?" She held it out. He didn't touch it. She set it on the bench instead. He read without bending, eyes skimming fast. The muscle in his jaw ticked once, then went still. Martin, he said, and the name was an oath, a sentence, a promise. Avery's voice was neutral. You'll need a scribe to prove the hand. And you'll need the crowd to want proof. Fear makes poor listeners. We don't have the crowd, Matthew said. His eyes met Hannah's. We have Hannah. The bands flared under her skin, a low burn. She hated the way the room watched her then. Daniel with his iron need, Matthew with his ache, Avery with her collected calculations. Because each gaze asked her to be something different, and she had already bled to be herself. What are you asking? She asked Matthew, though she already knew. He swallowed. Stand with me. Not against him. He flicked a glance at Daniel. But with me. When the people look for the shape of truth, let them see both their king and the queen who saved their sons standing for life, not for law written in a snake's hand. Daniel's head turned slowly. You want her to make you legitimate. I want her not to drown, Matthew said, the old heat back in his eyes. I want her to survive the thing you've chained her to. The air went sharp. Hannah stepped in before the words could become claws. Stop, she said quietly. Both of you. Martin is using this room like a knife. He cuts me and you bleed. He cuts you and the court turns. He cuts Matthew and the people bruise like fruit. She looked at Daniel. You told me custom breathes at your pleasure. Then change it. Let the court see us together. She looked at Matthew. Let them hear you say you were not betrayed by me. Matthew's jaw locked, pain flaring across his face like heat lightning. I was Hannah. Not by you, but I was. She had no answer to the truth of that. Only the old ache. Daniel moved first. He drew a key from his belt and knelt, not to beg but to work the lock at Matthew's wrists. The click was small and enormous. The manacles fell. Matthew flexed his fingers, the skin beneath the bands raw. Don't make me regret that, Daniel said. Don't give me reason to, Matthew returned. Avery's mouth quirked. Progress. Footsteps pounded in the hall, too many for a quiet corridor. The outer door banged open again. This time a captain filled it, breath fogging in the cool air. Sire, he caught, seeing the unlocked cuffs swallowed, went on. The council has called an open conclave. Great hall. Full court. They've sent runners to the villages. The ledges are already filling. Martin was moving faster than talk. Daniel's gaze cut to Hannah. She felt the question in his eyes and answered before he spoke. I walk beside you, she said. Both of you. Or not at all. Matthew's hand twitched like he might reach for hers, then fell. Avery snorted softly. Then walk, royalty. But know what you're walking into. They walked. Through servant corridors and cold stairwells, past tapestries of wolves and winter fields, into the spine of the mountain where Stonevale kept its heart. The great hall was a cavern of noise. Torches blazed along the pillars. Villagers crowded the lower steps. Court clustered in jeweled knots above. The dais at the far end had been dressed in too much silver. The metal flashed like teeth. Martin stood below the throne, arms spread, voice already rolling over the crowd like slick oil. And thus, for the good of Stonevale, we must ask, when law is twisted and power turns wild, who answers? When a queen burns the night and opens our gates to enemy eyes, who pays that price? We cannot be ruled by miracle and fear. We must be ruled by order. The swell of voices rose and fell around the phrase ruled by order like a tide catching a moon. The crowd shifted when Daniel entered, a physical ripple. He walked straight up the center aisle with Hannah at his right, Matthew at his left, Avery melting into the pillars like a shadow that watched for other shadows. They mounted the steps. Martin's mouth never quite lost the smile, but his eyes flared when he took in the alignment. King, queen, prince. Together. Daniel didn't sit. He turned to face the hall. The stone drank his voice and gave it back bigger. Stonevale, he said, Last night shadows came to our gate. This morning men marched. You lived because the guard held, because the captains bled, because a healer gave what she had until there was nothing left. He angled his head toward Hannah without looking away from the court. If this is a curse, then curse me with it until I die. A rumble answered, half cheers, half angry hiss. Martin lifted his hands, soothing the anger like a handler with a spooked team. And yet, Martin purred, we come to the problem before us. The bond that should have united us has instead divided the mountain. The prince himself was found fleeing with a stranger in our hour of need. Matthew stepped forward before Daniel could answer. I fled because your men rode to kill me in the king's name. He let the words settle. Then precise, not the king's order. Yours. Gasps. A hiss of outrage from the council benches. Martin's smile never cracked, but the cords in his neck stood out. Accusations, he said lightly. Where is this proof? Avery slid from shadow to light, her boots whispering over stone. She held the folded parchment between two fingers like a draw. Here. A dozen small shocks shivered through the crowd. Martin's eyes flicked to the scrap and away. A forgery, no doubt, fashioned by the Queen's associates. Let the scribes examine it, Hannah called, her voice clear and ringing. Then let the hall hear the truth. For a moment the balance trembled. Heads turned not to Martin, but to the line of elderly scribes in gray who stood at the wall like a row of quiet knives. One of them, thin, hawk-eyed, stepped forward. We would need the afternoon, my king. Take it, Daniel said. Martin slid smoothly into the gap the way water finds a crack in stone. While the ink dries, we still bleed. A solution is required now. He faced the crowd with the air of a man offering mercy and laid a blade on the table between brothers. Ancient law allows what custom forbids. To settle doubt without civil war, a challenge may be called. King against prince. Alpha to alpha. Winner takes crown. Loser yields or dies. The hall went breathless. Hannah's stomach turned ice. No. Martin's smile softened. It spares the people the slow death of division. It spares the Queen 1,000 cut whispers. It gives Stonevale an answer. Daniel didn't move. His stillness was the kind that breaks weather. You think I won't break you before I break my brother? You mistook me, Martin said, eyes bright as a cliff edge. I don't need you to call it. He turned and in a single clean motion, lifted his arm and pointed, not at the king but at Matthew. Prince, he said sweetly. Do you call challenge? Silence. 100 heartbeats beating one beat. Hannah looked at Matthew and in his face saw everything warred. Love and anger, duty and hurt. The boy who had tucked extra willow bark into her bag and the man who had watched his life be pronounced to someone else. His mouth opened. Closed. Opened again. Hannah, he said, the plea there for only her. Tell me not to. Her ribs were a cage. The sacred bands burned like they'd been struck with a hammer. Behind her eyes, the garden, the blade, the chain, the blood. Don't, she whispered. He flinched like the word itself hit. Then he lifted his chin and the sound his voice made was steady enough to change a mountain. I call it, Matthew said. The hall erupted, shouts, sobs, a roar like avalanche. Daniel's head tilted a fraction, the only sign anything inside him moved at all. Martin's smile finally became what it had always wanted to be. The right of challenge, he announced over the thunder, at moonrise. He bowed, obsequious, victorious, and turned away as the court shattered into noise. Hannah felt the world drop from under her. She reached for something, stone, air, Daniel's sleeve, and found his hand already there, catching her wrist, the bands blazing hot as iron fresh from the forge. We end him, Daniel said softly, not meaning Matthew, meaning the man who had just set fire to the mountain. One way or another. The torches guttered. The bell in the far tower told noon like a warning. At moonrise, brother would face brother. And the bond that had made Hannah a weapon would decide who survived. Chapter 17. Stonevale's halls had never been so loud, and yet Hannah had never felt such silence. The noise outside was endless, villagers chanting, wolves pacing, steel sharpening, but inside her chest was only a hollow ache that throbbed with each heartbeat. At moonrise, Daniel and Matthew would meet blade to blade, brother against brother, and Martin would watch, smiling no matter which fell. Hannah stood in the chamber's shadows, her bandaged shoulder itching beneath her gown. The parchment with Martin's treachery sat on the table, unheeded. Proof meant nothing now. The challenge had been called, and law was crueler than truth. The door creaked. Daniel entered, his cloak heavy with cold air, his jaw dark with stubble. He looked like a man carved from the mountain itself, unyielding, merciless. But when his eyes found her, something inside the mask cracked. "You should be resting," he said. She shook her head. "So should you." He didn't argue. Instead he came closer, his shadow swallowing the firelight. "The duel will end this." Her throat tightened. "Or end you." He reached for the band at her wrist, brushing it with rough fingers. The sacred bond pulsed hot. "Do you doubt me?" "I don't doubt your strength," she whispered. "I doubt what this law will cost you." His gaze sharpened. "Better me than you." The words were too raw, too unguarded. She turned away, but his hand caught her elbow, steadying her. "Hannah," he said softer, "when the moon rises, stay back. Do not touch the bond. Do not burn yourself for me again." Her eyes stung. "You can't order my heart, Daniel." For once he had no answer. The silence stretched until the horn of the 9th hour rang. He stepped back, mask settling. "I have preparations." "And I?" she asked. "You stay alive." Then he was gone. Later the guard led her to the cells again. Matthew sat unshackled this time, a candle burning low beside him. He looked younger without chains, too young to bear the weight Martin had thrown on him. "You came," he said, relief breaking his voice. "I shouldn't have," she murmured. "Daniel would. Daniel will kill me." Her chest tightened. "Don't say that. It's truth." He leaned forward, hazel eyes burning. "Hannah, listen. You know this wasn't meant to be. The decree proves it. You were mine. And if I win tomorrow, I will make it right. I'll end Martin, I'll free you from him, I'll..." She flinched. Don't speak promises you can't keep." His jaw locked. "Do you love him?" The question hit harder than any blade. She opened her mouth, but no sound came. The silence was answer enough. Matthew sat back, pain twisting his features. "Then he's already won." She reached for his hand, but he pulled away, burying his face in his palms. The guard shifted uncomfortably. "Time, my queen." She rose, heart splintering, and left him in the candle's dim light. That night the fortress was restless. Torches burned through every corridor, soldiers whispering, villagers crowding the gates. The moon climbed, pale and merciless. In the council chamber, Martin stood alone by the window, robes flowing like shadow. His smile glimmered faint in the glass. At his feet lay another parchment, this one sealed in red. The ink inside was fresh, its words sharp as blades. "If Daniel falls, crown Matthew. If Matthew falls, claim the queen. Either way the kingdom bends." He folded it with care, tucking it into his sleeve. Outside, the drums of the people beat like war. At moonrise, blood would settle the matter. And Martin would drink victory, no matter whose body lay broken on the stones. Chapter 18. The great hall had been stripped of banners. Only torches blazed along the pillars, their flames bending toward the moonlight streaming through the high windows. The air was thick with breath, fear, anticipation. The people of Stonevale packed every ledge, every stair. Wolves in partial shift growled low, restless. The council sat like vultures at the dais, Martin in front, robes gleaming silver as if he were already dressed for a funeral. At the hall's center, the circle had been cleared. Chalk lines marked the boundary. Within it, nothing but stone and law. Hannah stood at the edge, her wrists burning beneath the bands. She wanted to scream, to beg, to tear the lines away. But custom was older than her breath. To step into the circle was death. Daniel entered first. Cloak gone, sword in hand, his shoulders broad and unyielding. The crowd's murmur dropped to silence as he crossed into the circle and lifted his blade in salute. Matthew followed, unshackled now, dressed in plain leather. His eyes searched the crowd once, then landed on Hannah. She saw the boy he had been, the man he might have become. And the grief nearly buckled her knees. The officiant, a gray-bearded scribe, raised his voice. By sacred law the challenge is called. Brother against brother. Winner claims crown. Loser yields, or dies. The hall held its breath. Then the scribe dropped his hand. Steel clashed. Daniel struck first, his power a storm. Matthew met him with speed, deflecting, spinning, his lighter blade darting like fire. Sparks flew. Wolves roared. The brothers moved like mirror and shadow. Same blood, different steel. Daniel's blows were heavy, brutal, meant to end quickly. Matthew fought to survive, ducking, rolling, striking when openings flashed. Yield, Daniel growled between blows. Never, Matthew spat, eyes burning. Their swords locked face to face. Hannah saw the strain in Daniel's jaw, the fury and the sorrow in Matthew's eyes. And she knew, this was not just fight. This was everything they had never said. Minutes bled like hours. Sweat ran, blades clanged, wolves shouted. And then, Matthew slipped. Daniel's strike landed, cutting his side. Blood spilled. Hannah gasped. The bands flared. Heat surged up her arms, wild and blinding. No, she cried. The word echoed louder than her own voice, as if the bond itself spoke. Both brothers faltered, heads snapping toward her. The glow from her wrists lit the hall silver white, wrapping the circle in firelight. She interferes. Martin's voice rang out, sharp as a knife. The bond corrupts the right. No, Daniel snarled, turning back, blade ready. But in that heartbeat of distraction, Matthew lunged. His sword grazed Daniel's ribs, cutting deep. The king staggered. Blood darkened his tunic. Gasps tore through the crowd. Hannah's body moved before her mind could think. She stepped into the circle. The hall erupted. Wolves shouted, some in fury, some in awe. But she didn't hear. She fell to her knees beside Daniel, pressing her glowing hands to his wound. Silver fire seared the cut, knitting flesh, pushing blood back into veins. Daniel gritted his teeth, gasping, his hand clamping around her wrist. Hannah, stop. I won't, she whispered. The glow spread not just into him but into the stone itself. The chalk lines shattered. The circle broke. The entire hall reeled back, blinded. When the light dimmed, Hannah still knelt, Daniel steadying her with one arm. His wound was closed. Her own body shook, drained but alive. Matthew stood across from them, his blade lowered, his face pale with shock. You broke the law. Martin's voice cut like a whip. Then she is no queen. And the king who allows this is no king. The hall roared, divided, chaos boiling. Some cried for Hannah as miracle, others for curse. Daniel rose slowly, helping her to her feet. His eyes blazed silver as he faced the council, his voice a growl that silenced the noise. Then hear me. She is curse, I claim her curse. She is miracle, I claim her miracle. She is mine. And if any man calls her less than queen, he answers to my sword. The people gasped, caught between fear and awe. And Martin smiled, because even in defiance, Daniel had just tied himself tighter to the bond. Chapter 19. The great hall was chaos. Wolves howled, villagers shouted, steel scraped stone. The broken chalk lines still smoked where Hannah's power had shattered them. Martin stepped forward, robes gleaming, arms lifted like a preacher. His voice cut through the din. You all saw it. The queen broke sacred law. The circle was defiled. The bond is poison, twisting right and order. By law, the crown is forfeit. Shouts answered, half in agreement, half in protest. The people teetered like a pack on the edge of frenzy. Daniel stood at the center, sword still in hand, blood dark on his ribs though the wound had closed. His voice was iron. No law names mercy as treason. No bond is stronger than the one forged in battle. You call her poison? She saved your king's life. But Martin's smile widened. And nearly killed the right itself. The people demand stability. He turned, voice ringing. Then give them what they demand. Crown Prince Matthew the rightful heir. Gasps tore through the hall. All eyes flew to Matthew, who stood frozen, blade at his side, face ashen. Hannah's chest seized. She stepped forward, her wrists burning, her voice sharp. No. Martin, you dare speak of rightful heirs while hiding your own treachery? The parchment Avery had given her weighed heavy in her sleeve. She drew it now, holding it high. This letter bears your mark. A command to see Matthew killed before the proving. Signed by your hand, sealed with your ink. A hush dropped like a stone. Every scribe in the hall strained forward. One, the hawk-eyed elder, rose and spoke. Bring it here. Hannah carried it forward, her legs trembling but steady. The elder studied it, his lips tightening. The hand is disguised, but poorly. A clerk of 30 years could see through this. It is his. Gasps. Growls. The tide of noise shifted. Martin's mask cracked only for a heartbeat, then smoothed. Forgery. The queen conspires with rogues and pretenders to frame me. Avery's voice rang from the pillars. Then explain why I found it on the corpse of your hired man. She stepped into the torchlight, tossing the dead man's insignia at his feet. The hall roared. Villagers shouted traitor. Wolves bared their teeth. Martin's eyes flared wild. His hand darted beneath his robe, steel flashed. A dagger aimed straight at Hannah. Witch, he spat. I'll cut the curse from you myself. Time slowed. Hannah's heart lurched, frozen. But Daniel moved faster. He stepped between, blade sweeping. Steel clanged. Sparks flew. The dagger skittered across stone. Daniel's voice was thunder. Enough. He drove Martin back with a brutal strike, sword at his throat. The counselor stumbled, robes tangling, his composure finally gone. The hall's fury boiled into one voice. Death for the traitor. Martin's gaze darted, searching for a lifeline. He found none. Daniel's blade hovered at his neck. But Hannah stepped forward, her voice cutting sharper than steel. No. Let him live. Let the people see mercy stronger than his cruelty. Let him rot in the cells he filled with innocence. That is justice. The crowd wavered, then erupted louder than before. Not fear. Not division. A roar of unity. Daniel's eyes flicked to her, unreadable, then back to Martin. His voice was low, lethal. Mercy then. But know this, counselor, your life belongs to her word now. And she has given it. Guards dragged Martin away, spitting and cursing. The hall shook with the sound of wolves howling, not for blood but for judgment. Daniel lowered his sword. He looked at Hannah across the broken circle, the torches painting silver in his eyes. And in that moment, before all of Stonevale, he reached for her hand. The bands blazed. Not with fire this time, but with steady light, pulsing like a heartbeat that belonged to them both. The people saw. The court bowed. The fortress shifted. The reckoning was done. Chapter 20. Dawn spilled pale gold over Stonevale, chasing the night's smoke from the air. The fortress courtyards were crowded once more, but the mood had changed. No whispers, no jeers. Just the hum of a people waiting, the weight of choice pressing like snow on pine. The dais had been raised in the open square. The council sat stiff and subdued, Martin's absence a glaring silence. The villagers filled the steps, children perched on shoulders, elders leaning on staffs. Wolves padded in the shadows, ears pricked. Daniel stood before them, a king still streaked with battle grime but unbowed. Beside him, Hannah's hand rested in his. The sacred bands pulsed steady, silver warmth threading between them. Not chains. Not cages. A living bond. When the murmurs quieted, Daniel spoke. His voice carried like the mountain wind. Stonevale has been ruled too long by fear. By law twisted to chains. By men who mistake cruelty for strength. No more. The crowd shifted, drawn closer. He lifted their joined hands. This queen was bound to me by deceit. But she has proven herself bound by choice. She healed when others cowered. She stood when others called her curse. She showed mercy where I would have swung the blade. If you call that weakness, then call me weak beside her. The people roared, not in protest but in fierce approval. Wolves howled, their voices weaving with the crowd until the air shook. Daniel's eyes found Hannah's, softer now, though the fire still burned. From this day the law will change. Sacred bonds will not be tools for power. They will be honored only where hearts choose. Strength will be measured not in blood spilled but in lives protected. The council stirred uneasily. But the scribes, the captains, even the villagers cheered louder. A tide was turning, irreversible. Then Matthew stepped forward. He wore no chains now, only a plain cloak, his face pale but steady. His eyes swept the crowd, then landed on Hannah. "Stonevale," he said, his voice breaking then steadying. "I was meant to be your bond. That truth was stolen from us. But you see now that truth is not always fate. Hannah's heart has chosen. And I," his jaw tightened, "I yield. To her. To him. To this bond." The gasp was sharp, then softened into murmurs of respect. He bowed his head, not to Daniel alone but to them both. Hannah's throat burned. For all his pain, Matthew had chosen peace over pride. He would carry that mercy always. Daniel stepped forward, clasped his brother's shoulder, and for a moment the hall held its breath. Then Daniel pulled him into a rough embrace. The people roared approval, the fracture sealed. When the noise ebbed, Hannah raised her voice. "From this day forward, Stonevale will not fear healers. Our strength lies not in breaking the weak but in standing together. No more will mercy be called witchcraft. No more will kindness be punished." The villagers cheered, fierce and hungry for change. Wolves howled until the mountain echoed with it. The bands at her wrists glowed steady, no longer searing but warm, like a heartbeat that matched her own. For the first time since her vows were stolen, Hannah felt not trapped but chosen. Daniel turned to her, his voice rough. "Stand with me, Hannah Moore. Not because of law. Not because of bonds. Because you choose it." Her heart surged, and before all of Stonevale she answered, "I choose you." The square erupted, a roar of voices and howls. A kingdom remade in a single breath. Daniel bent his head, pressed his forehead to hers, and the bond pulsed once, bright and steady, as if the mountain itself acknowledged the vow. The new law had been written. Not in ink. Not in chains. But in fire, mercy and choice. Epilogue. Weeks later, Stonevale no longer smelled of smoke and fear. The courtyards rang with sparring laughter, not whispers. Children ran between training yards and gardens where wolfsbane no longer grew untended. Hannah had insisted the poisonous plants be trimmed back, replaced with herbs for healing. From her balcony, she watched a boy chase a pup across the flagstones. Jacob, the page she had saved that first terrible morning. His laugh was bright now, lungs whole. She smiled, warmth spreading in her chest. Behind her the door creaked. Daniel stepped into the chamber, broad shoulders wrapped in a simple cloak, not a king's mantle. He carried no crown, only a basket of firewood. "You still rise earlier than the sun," he muttered, setting the wood down by the hearth. "I can't sleep when the fortress hums," she said. "It feels alive now." He came to stand beside her at the balcony rail. For a moment they simply looked out together. At the village fires, the wolves patrolling not as jailers but as guardians. At a kingdom reshaped by mercy. His hand found hers, rough and steady. The bands at their wrists glowed faintly, not searing, not binding, just warm. A pulse like shared breath. You changed them, he said. We changed them, she corrected softly. He turned, eyes silver in the dawn. Do you regret it? Her throat tightened. She remembered the humiliation of the vows, the battles, the bond burning her veins. And then she remembered this. His hand steady on hers, the people's cheers, the way the mountain no longer felt like a cage but a home. No, she whispered. I chose it. I choose you. Daniel bent, pressing his forehead to hers. For the first time the fortress did not feel cold. Outside, the wolves howled as the sun climbed, their voices no longer a warning but a song. And in the quiet firelight of their chamber, Hannah knew the truth. What had begun as an accident had become the life she wanted. Forged not by law but by choice and by love strong enough to change a kingdom. If you've stayed with me through Hannah and Daniel's journey, thank you for listening till the very end. Now I'd love to hear from you. Do you think Hannah made the right choice standing by Daniel, or should she have fought harder for Matthew? Tell me in the comments. If this story made your heart race, imagine what's coming next. Don't miss it. Hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on the bell so you never miss another story of love, betrayal, and redemption.